Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We're continuing our Big Ten football predictions today, and our next team hasn't won a bowl game since 1991, but returns 10 starters and are looking to break that streak. They are the Indiana Hoosiers. Indiana went 5-7 in the first year of the Tom Allen era, but 4 of their 7 losses were decided by 8 points or less. So a 5-7 season could have very well been a 9-3 season, but this year Indiana is looking to win the close games, and they will do so with 10 returning starters, 7 on offense and 3 on defense. They have a bit of a quarterback battle going on right now. They have Brandon Dawkins, the transfer quarterback from Arizona, or will it be Peyton Ramsey, who played for Indiana last year and put up 1,252 yards through the air and had 10 touchdowns. So he's familiar with the Tom Allen system, familiar with his Indiana program. So it's going to be very interesting to see who they decide, whether it's going to be Dawkins or Ramsey. I'm going to put my money on Brandon Dawkins, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe both quarterbacks play a little bit. Richard Legault, I was really high on him last year, and now he's gone, so that's why we have to decide between these two quarterbacks. But whoever they choose, they should be fine there. At running back, they have Morgan Ellison, who was their leading rusher from last year. They have wide receivers Nick Westbrook and Luke Timian, and Westbrook was one that I thought was going to have a great connection with Richard Legault last year, but Westbrook ended up getting hurt, I believe, in the first game of the season against Ohio State. And Indiana returns all 5 of their offensive linemen, which is good news for Morgan Ellison, and obviously whoever plays quarterback, giving them protection in the pocket. The defense is what concerns me the most about the Hoosiers this season, with only 3 returning starters on that side of the ball. You're going to have Jacob Robinson leading the defensive line, which is mostly senior-led, so probably going to be the strength of the Hoosier defense. But you also have Andre Brown and Jonathan Crawford that are going to be leading the secondary. But Indiana loses 6 defensive starters from last year's team that just barely missed out on the bowl game. So that's a lot of production that they lose from last year. Only 3 returned this year. It's going to be really interesting to see how they handle that. And like I said, that defense is probably going to be the anchor and the reason that they're going to have so many close games. So can the defense come through in the close ones and get Indiana to a bowl game? They open the season against Florida International on the road. So a very interesting matchup there. The Power 5 going to the Group of 5 team. This would be a game that I would be more concerned for Indiana if Florida International had lost their quarterback in Alex Mago, but he is gone now. Florida International, a lot of inexperience there. Shouldn't be an issue for Indiana. They're going to get a season-opening win there. And then Virginia, another interesting Power 5 versus Power 5 opponent. You got Big Ten versus ACC. Last year, Indiana went on the road and beat a Virginia team that was better last year than they're going to be this year, and they beat them by 17 points. So I think Virginia, with a more inexperienced team this year, they lose their star quarterback in Kurt Benkert. The defense will be very strong, so if the defense can come in and shut down Indiana's offense, maybe Virginia's offense can get something going against this somewhat inexperienced Hoosier defense. But I'm going to give Indiana the edge. They're at home. I think they've got more talent on the offensive side of the ball, and I'm going to give them a win there. That's back-to-back games for Indiana, where the 2 opponents have lost their star quarterback, Benkert for Virginia and Mago for Florida International. That definitely benefits them as they're breaking in new quarterbacks, especially this early on in the season. Then Ball State shouldn't be much of a problem for them. They don't need to overlook Ball State, but they probably should get a win at home there. So 3-0 going into Big Ten play against Michigan State. Now the Spartans are coming off bye week coming into this game. Indiana has given Michigan State some trouble in the past. Last year's game was just a 17-9 game, so Indiana certainly has the talent to compete with the Spartans, but Michigan State returns 19 starters, including 10 on offense and 9 on defense. I really, really like this Michigan State team, one that I think can really compete in the Big Ten East. So despite this game being at home for Indiana, I don't see them upsetting the Spartans. Maybe they can hang with them and keep it close, but Brian Lewerke, L.J. Scott, Felton Davis, those kind of guys on that Michigan State offense, added with that 9 returning stars on the defensive side of the ball, I just don't see Indiana getting a lot of production here, so a loss for them against the Spartans. And then on the road at Rutgers, this was a game that was really back and forth on. I couldn't decide whether to pick the Scarlet Knights or whether to pick the Hoosiers here. Last year, Indiana beat Rutgers at home 41-0. So, in theory, you would think not much can change over 1 year where Indiana's going to lose again. They had beaten the team 41-0 the year before. But it is on the road, and this is a Rutgers team that I really think is going to be a lot more improved, has the chance to get to a bowl game, but they do have a very difficult schedule somewhere. So they're going to be borderline bowl eligible, but with it on the road, with them returning 15 starters, 7 on offense, 8 on defense, and this offense that I think is really, with the new offensive coordinator, is going to take off and have a lot more production than they had last year. I'm going to give Indiana a road loss here against the Scarlet Knights. Because I think Rutgers is more improved, because it is on the road, and Rutgers might have a bit of a revenge factor there, losing 41-0. That's embarrassing, and you want to get back at the team for that. At Ohio State, Indiana hung with Ohio State last year in the season opener, actually leading 21-20 in the third quarter, and then Ohio State ended up pulling away and annihilating the Hoosiers for the final score there. So, with it being on the road at an Ohio State team that will be contending for the college football playoff, will be contending for the Big Ten championship, a dual threat quarterback in Dwayne Haskins, a solid defense led by Nick Bosa, J.K. Dobbins on the at running back, and it's on the road. I don't see any way Indiana is able to go in to Columbus and get a win here, so a loss for Indiana. And then back home against Iowa. This is another very interesting game, one that Indiana certainly has the talent to win this game. It is at home. They're coming off 3 straight losses. They're 3-3, and if they want to get to a bowl game, this is one of those games, especially with it being at home, that they need to win. Iowa bringing back Nathan Stanley and Noah Fant at tight end. Nathan Stanley at quarterback. Noah Fant, one of the better tight ends in the entire nation. They also return wide receiver Nick Easley. So a very solid Iowa offense going up against what I still think is going to be a weaker Indiana defense. I'm going to give the edge to Iowa here. I would give the edge to Iowa if this game was on the road, too, with Iowa being such a dangerous place to play. But I think Iowa is going to be Wisconsin's biggest threat in the Big Ten West. And I just don't see Indiana being able to put up enough points against a pretty solid Iowa defense. And then I don't see the Indiana defense being able to stop this Iowa offense. So another loss there. And then, unfortunately, another loss against Penn State. Also, I know it's at home, but Penn State, and I know they lost Saquon Barkley, but he didn't make up the entire team. Penn State still has a very solid quarterback in Trace McSorley, solid wide receivers, and a defense that also only returns 3 starters, but I think James Franklin's going to have that team rolling, especially this late in the season. The defense is going to be able to get some chemistry there, and I just don't see Indiana beating the Nittany Lions despite it being at home. And then at Minnesota, this is another game that Indiana certainly has the potential and the talent to win, even though it is on the road. Minnesota, returning 14 starters, had 3 losses last year by 7 points or less. So their 5-7 record, like Indiana, really didn't indicate how good that team really was. They easily could have been an 8-win team. Indiana could have easily been a 9-win team. This is a team led by P.J. Fleck that I'm really excited to see. They return Rodney Smith at running back. Tanner Morgan, a freshman quarterback, is going to start for the Golden Gophers more than likely. With this game being on the road and with Minnesota, I think, really being improved on the offensive side of the ball, I just don't think Indiana's going to be able to go on the road and get a win there. So another loss to the Golden Gophers, and they're going into a bye week, and a much-needed bye week, because they're going to have to win all 3 of these games, and 2 of them are certainly winnable, Maryland and Purdue, and then a road game at Michigan. We'll start with Maryland. Indiana coming out of the bye, and a Maryland team that was solid last year but had so many injuries that they went 4-8. They have a solid quarterback, whether it's Casey Hill or Tyrell Pregrom or both. They play both a little bit, but it is at home. It is coming out of a bye week. I think this offense, regardless of who's at quarterback, is going to continue to click for the Hoosiers. And hopefully, maybe somewhere around this Ohio State game or the Iowa game, that Indiana defense will start to pick things up and look a little bit better. And I think that will be the case here, especially coming out of a bye week. I think they get a big-time home win against Maryland. And then on the road at Michigan. If you remember last year, Michigan only had 1 returning starter on the defensive side of the ball, and Indiana nearly beat the Wolverines, losing 27-20 in overtime. That game, of course, was at home, and this is a Michigan team that is completely different from that 8-5 team that we saw last year. 17 returning starters, Shea Patterson at quarterback, solid running backs, Donovan People-Jones at wide receiver. You have Rashawn Gary along the defensive line. This is a very, very solid and dangerous Michigan team. And I don't see Indiana going into the Big House, especially this late in the season where Michigan could still be playing, have a chance to play for the Big Ten title, could potentially be in the college football playoff race. I just don't see Michigan napping on the Hoosiers here, especially with it being at home. I think Indiana loses to the Wolverines there, and that's going to put them out of bowl contention there. That'll be their seventh loss here, so they're going to be out of bowl contention, but they still have their rival against Purdue to close out the season. Last year was a very close game with a winner-go-home situation for both teams. The winner was going to a bowl game. The loser was staying home. Purdue got the best of the Hoosiers, I believe, winning that game by 7 or 14 points. This game being at home for Indiana, going up against your rival, I think they're going to get a win over the Boilermakers, who, like the Hoosiers, are going to have a fairly weak defense, but actually a decent offense. I really like their quarterback situation at Purdue. A lot of talent on that side of the ball, and I think Indiana will also have a lot of talent on that side of the ball as well. This game could potentially be very, very high scoring because of the lack of defenses there. With it being at home, with Indiana wanting to go out high, and of course still having the possibility of getting into a bowl with a 5-7 record, as we've seen in the past, I think they get a win over Purdue and finishes the season 5-7 for the second straight year. And I know some people think this could be the year that Indiana breaks through and gets back to a bowl game, and hopefully they can get their first bowl win since 1991. And if I'm looking at the schedule where I have losses where I think they could get a win, I think their best bets are Iowa at home, on the road at Rutgers, and on the road at Minnesota. I think those are the three teams that Indiana could maybe beat, and maybe those are going to be the games that are going to be the close games that they just couldn't win last year, that maybe they can flip the script and actually win this year. But the Scarlet Knights, Hawkeyes, and the Golden Gophers, I think, are the three teams that Indiana has the potential to beat, but two of those do come on the road, and as we all know, playing on the road much more difficult than playing at home. You can go check our home field advantage and road advantage studies for the proof on that. So a 5-7 record for the Hoosiers this year, but it would not surprise me if they can get to a 6-6 record or potentially better, just like they could have easily been 9-3 just last year. But another solid year for Tom Allen and his Hoosiers team. Hopefully they can improve next year and get to a bowl game in year 3. As always, please go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, on Instagram at The Gridiron Expert, and always here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.